Picture a map of North America. The shape you know, two coasts, all that land in the middle. Kansas, Nebraska, Colorado, flat, landlocked, about as far from the ocean as you can get on the continent. Now imagine standing somewhere in the middle of Kansas, maybe a wheat field, maybe just nothing in every direction, and looking out and seeing water. Not a lake, not a flood. An ocean, horizon to horizon. Warm, shallow, and full of things that want to kill you. That isn't a hypothetical. That was reality. For millions of years, that wheat field was the bottom of a sea. And the terrifying part isn't that the animals were dangerous, it's that the animals came to you. The ocean moved. The land drowned. And the creatures that lived in it patrolled what is now the American Midwest, the European plains, and half the ancient world like it was always theirs. Because it was. To understand what happened, you need to understand one geological concept: marine transgression. And yes, that sounds like a term from a textbook, but what it actually describes is one of the most dramatic things the planet can do. A marine transgression is when sea levels rise so dramatically or continents sink slowly enough that the ocean literally floods over land. Not for a season, not for a century, for millions of years at a time. And this happened repeatedly throughout Earth's history. The ocean has flooded whole continents multiple times. It has buried mountain ranges under warm, shallow water. It has turned prairies into seafloors and forests into coral reefs. And every time it did, whatever was living on that land either fled, adapted, or got swallowed. The ocean doesn't wait. It doesn't knock. It just comes. The three biggest examples of this are the Zechstein Sea in Europe, the Western Interior Seaway in North America, and the ancient Tethys Ocean, which at its peak covered so much of what is now Asia and the Middle East that the idea of inland basically didn't exist. Each one of these tells a different chapter of the same story, and none of them end well for the things that were already there. Around 250 million years ago, during the Permian period, a shallow arm of the ocean crept over what would eventually become northern Europe. Germany, the Netherlands, England, parts of Poland, all of it, submerged. And what was left behind when the water eventually evaporated over millions of years is one of the most remarkable geological records on Earth. Enormous salt deposits, kilometers thick, that you can still mine today. The salt you put on your food might, and I want to be clear, this is a stretch, but it might have trace minerals that were once part of the Zechstein Sea, which is either poetic or weird, and I genuinely can't decide which. But here's the thing about the Zechstein that people don't always appreciate. It wasn't just an empty sheet of water. It was alive, and it was occupied by creatures that had no idea they were sitting on top of what would one day be Berlin. Conodonts, small, eel-like animals with complex tooth structures, were among the dominant filter feeders. Various fish species, ancient sharks, and marine invertebrates packed these warm, shallow waters. The Zechstein Sea was, by all accounts, productive and crowded. It was just also, from the perspective of anyone standing on the land it replaced, absolutely terrifying to contemplate. And the land it replaced was real. There were animals on it. The Permian period was populated with some genuinely strange creatures. We've covered some of them on this channel before, and many of them simply ran out of ground to stand on as the water advanced. Not quickly, geologically slowly, but inexorably. The continent just went under, and the ocean didn't care about the animals already living on it. Now, if the Zechstein was dramatic, the Western Interior Seaway was something else entirely. Between roughly 166 million years ago, right in the heart of the Cretaceous period, a shallow sea cut North America clean in half. It stretched from what is now the Arctic Ocean all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico, covering what today is the Great Plains, the Dakotas, Kansas, Nebraska, Colorado. All of it was under roughly 800 to 900 meters, around 600 to 3,000 feet of warm, shallow water. And in that water lived some of the most formidable marine predators that have ever existed. The most well-known of these are the mosasaurs. And if you've never had a proper mosasaur moment, let me fix that. Mosasaurs were not small animals. Plesiosaurs, one of the biggest genera found in Western Interior Seaway deposits, reached lengths of up to 12 meters, about 40 feet. To put that in perspective, that is longer than a city bus, and considerably more motivated than a city bus. Plesiosaurs had a long, powerful tail, 4 paddle-like limbs, and a skull designed for one specific purpose: biting things and not letting go. Fossils found in Kansas, again. Kansas, the landlocked state, show these animals in extraordinary detail. Paleontologists have even found Tylosaurus specimens with the remains of other mosasaurs, sharks, and large fish inside their stomachs. So they were eating their competition. Just to be thorough about it. But shockingly, or maybe by this point unshockingly, Tylosaurus wasn't even the only threat in that sea. You also had plesiosaurs, long-necked marine reptiles that looked, and I think this is a fair description, like someone attached a small head to a very large body via the longest neck possible and said, "Fine, ship it." Elasmosaurus, found in Kansas, had a neck containing 72 vertebrae. 72. The entire neck was roughly 7 meters 23 feet long. The whole animal stretched to about 14 meters. Paleontologists used to debate which end was the head and which was the tail, which is the kind of fossil confusion that makes the field both humbling and kind of hilarious. And then there was Zechstein, a fish the size of a large great white shark, up to 6 meters or 20 feet long, with a mouth full of fang-like teeth and an apparently legendary appetite. One of the most famous fossils ever found is a Zechstein specimen with an almost perfectly preserved 8-meter fish still inside its stomach, apparently swallowed whole, and so large it may have actually killed the Zechstein from the inside, which is a story I respect. Not for the Zechstein, obviously, but as a story. Remember what I said earlier about the ocean not caring about the animals already living there? Well, this is what moved in to replace them. The entire interior of North America, the heartland. The breadbasket was a sea full of animals that would have been apex predators anywhere on Earth. And the dinosaurs on the shores on either side of that seaway? They had a permanent ocean border they couldn't cross and couldn't ignore. The Tethys Ocean deserves its own video, honestly, and it'll probably get one. But the short version is this. For most of the Mesozoic era, an enormous ocean sat where Central Asia, the Middle East, and parts of southern Europe are today. The Tethys was not a shallow inland sea. It was a full, deep ocean, and at its maximum extent, it practically girded the globe. The Himalayas? Those are its floor. The compressed, folded rock that makes up some of the highest mountains on Earth was once sediment at the bottom of the Tethys Sea. That is a sentence that takes a moment to sit with. You can climb Everest and be standing on what was once a seafloor. The ocean was there before the mountains were even an idea. The Tethys was home to ichthyosaurs, plesiosaurs, and a staggering variety of ammonites, the coiled, spiral-shelled cephalopods that show up in so many Mesozoic rocks that they've become almost synonymous with the era. Some ammonites in the Tethys reached truly absurd sizes. Parapuzosia sepenradensis, found in European deposits that were once part of the greater Tethys system, had a shell diameter of up to 1 8 meters, nearly 6 feet across. That's not a shell, that's furniture. Here's the thing that gets me about all of this. We tend to think of oceans as a place you go to. You travel to the coast. You get in a car, drive for hours, and eventually the land ends and the water begins. That border feels permanent. It feels like a fact, but it isn't. It's just a snapshot. The coastline we know has existed for, geologically speaking, about 5 minutes. And before that, the ocean was somewhere else. Somewhere that now has streets and buildings and wheat fields and people who have no idea. Mosasaurs patrolled what is now Topeka, Kansas. Plesiosaurs circled what is now rural Nebraska. Ammonites, the size of dining tables, drifted through what is now the Iranian Plateau. None of those animals knew they were doing anything unusual. That was just where the ocean was. And honestly, if you want a reminder that the world you're living in is not the world, just one version of it, one frame in a very long film, the Western Interior Seaway is a pretty good place to start. The ocean didn't come for them. It just came. And eventually, it left. And the land dried out, and new animals moved in, and none of them could have imagined what was swimming there before. Just like you probably didn't, until now. If you want more deep dives into the worlds that existed before the one we know, subscribe and stick around. There's a lot more planet to cover, and a lot more water that used to be land.